All right. So you guys completed your thumbnails. You are going to have a guideline of some sort on your canvas, okay? You don't have to, so don't feel like you have to get every little detail on your guideline. Don't drive yourself crazy because you're going to paint over it anyway, okay? I'm going to show you, like, I'm going to do no guidelines. I'm going to show you it's going to be fine, okay? We have primary colors. They are different, there are different versions of each one. So there's 2 different blues, there's 2 different reds, there's 2 different yellows. One is typically a warmer primary and one is typically a cooler primary. Okay, so in the instance of the yellow, it's pretty easy to see that this one is warmer because it's a little bit duller. Between the reds, this one is warmer and then this one's cooler. Okay, and then between the blues are the hardest to tell. The more vibrant blue is the cooler one, and the more dull blue is the warmer one. And the way that you can think about that is red is inherently a warm color, right? So if you have a cooler version of a warm color, it's going to be dull because when you mix a warm and a cool together, it dulls it down. So the same thing would be true of the blue because blue is inherently a cool color. When you have a warmer version of it, it's going to appear a little bit duller. Does that make sense? The reason that we want to use 2 different primaries is for the same reason we want to avoid having flat areas of color. It's to give a little bit more depth, a little bit more life, a little bit more character to your painting so that it's not like a coloring book where it's just flat color next to flat color next to flat color. Okay, so all of this is going to help kind of bring life and depth and dimension to your painting. So I'm going to work from this one, which is a good example for this because the color scheme for this is a triadic scheme of the primary colors. And because we don't want to just use the colors straight out of the bottle, we want to mix, we're going to have to do a little bit of mixing creatively in order to kind of bring life to that and not just use it straight out of the bottle. So always wet your brush a little bit first. It's just going to make it easier to clean later, and it's going to make your brush not absorb so much of the paint. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with yellow, kind of as my guide. So I'm going to use a little bit of the warm yellow and a little bit of the cool yellow. We have the cups over there that are kind of pre-filled with some primary colors, so I would use those first. But I like to mix on a tray because then I can kind of see what my color is doing before I hit the canvas. Okay, I'm going to go a little darker than I normally would because you guys need to see it. Okay, normally I would just do like almost like a lightened, like I would add white to that so that it's almost paper color like you guys are doing with your pencils. So that way it's easier to paint over. Okay, so I've got the top of my head shape about here, and I've got the bottom of my head shape about here. And mentally, I'm thinking to myself, okay, how big is this distance compared to this distance? This one's a little bit bigger, so I made this one a little bit bigger than this distance. Does that make sense? So I'm thinking proportionally. Obviously, this is longer than it is wide, more so than this. This one is a little bit shorter compared to the width than this one is. So it's going to look a little bit squished. And that's okay. And my sides are kind of like that. Okay, so do you see the parts of the shape that I kind of lined out? All right. Mm-hmm. And then I'm going to block in. So I'm looking at this shape here, like the top of the head, compared to this and compared to this is almost about a third, like a third, a third, a third. So I'm going to just use that as a guideline. So I've got a third, and a third. And then I can start, I think this needs to be putting that in. So do you guys see how I got from the thumbnail to this? Okay. Mm-hmm. It does not matter if this is not neat right now because we want it to look like a painting, not like a photo or not like something that needs to be tight and controlled. Okay. I've got the neck shape down here. And this pretty much comes it almost divides this in half. It's a little bit to the left So here would be my halfway point. So I'm going to go a little to the left. And for this project especially, I don't care if it's exactly like your thumbnail. It's probably not going to be. And that's fine because it's an abstraction, right? And this goes all the way down to the corner. I think I'm just going to make an aesthetic choice and come up a little bit so that it doesn't come right into the corner. You are welcome to make those changes. Okay, I'm not going to hold you to exactly what's in the thumbnail. Go ahead and make it stronger if you feel like you need to. And then this line comes through here. And then I have this line comes all the way up to here. And this one comes through. This is a little bit, these two shapes are equal. This one's a little bigger. So if I take this, that goes to here. This is not going to fit proportionally. That's okay though. This does cross. If I go from here, it's about halfway. So if I do halfway, that's about here. So is it making sense kind of what my thought process is doing? Okay, that may or may not be your thought process, but it's okay because we're different. Okay, and then I've got an eye here. That's enough for me to know where that is. I've got a mouth up here. And then I've got a nose here. It's all right if they look very abstract. And then this is another eye down here, yes? Mm-hmm. Okay, so I've got like the basics in, right? So I'm gonna start with the yellow shape up here. And I'm going to block it in as a gradient because, again, I don't want flat areas. So I'm going to start with some yellow. I am a big fan of what I call Xing. I kind of just am almost making X brush strokes, and they just kind of overlap. I'm not worried about making anything smooth. It's totally fine if the strokes show. I like that the strokes show because it gives it some visual activity and some interest. Okay, so I want to overlap this yellow onto this other yellow. Whenever you're blending, you should be thinking overlapping. And the wetter they both are, the more they will blend. And then down here, there's some red. So I'm going to block in a little bit of that. And if I want to blend that back out, I just take the yellow that I had over there and blend. So does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. That's good for that. I'm going to move on to my other yellow shapes. I'm not going to go like a printer and go straight down and then only hit everything once. I know I'm going to come back to this section. So I'm going to hit the other yellow areas next. I'm going to use this lighter yellow because it's lighter down here. That's this one, right? I probably could have gotten myself some white paint and faded to white as that went down. Since I didn't, I'm going to pick up this blue from the upper corner. What did I not do when I went from this shape to this one? Anybody pick that up?
Clean your brush.
I did not clean the brush. Why not? I know that feels like I'm sinning, right?
Well, you're using the same color.
I was using the same color.
So it's not as flat?
Not flatness is part of it. If I repeat these colors down here, what visual effect does that create? Whenever you repeat, yep, it creates repetition, and repetition creates what? Creates balance. Mm. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Because it feels like it belongs because there's others like it. So it's okay if there's some red in here from up here because it's going to make it feel like all those colors go together. So I've got another yellow over here. Maybe in this one I'll pick up some of the red, but I'll do a cooler red. That ended up being a lot of it. So I can come back in with my yellow. Yellow is going to be your color that covers the worst. So I always start with the yellow because it's easy to blend colors in, right? How much blue and how much red did I use in those? Not much. So all I did there is I just kind of smoothed out that edge. Make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There's kind of a dance between too much of this, too much of this, too much of this, and you just kind of keep adjusting until you get it the way you like. This one down here is a little bit more orange, so I've got that on my brush already. Maybe I want to add a little bit more red to that. So I've already kind of lost that direct comparison. I'm being more inspired by this than I am copying it, okay? If you set your mindset up to try to copy that, you're just gonna be disappointed because you can't capture in this exactly what you have in this because they're different materials, right? So use it as a plan and as a guide and as inspiration more than as like a direct instruction. Maybe I'll use this one. Okay, so that's the majority of my yellow shapes, right? And that, especially if I wasn't talking, that would have gone a lot faster too. Not that I expect you to rush, but I don't need you to feel like it has to be like such a carefully controlled kind of thing. I'm gonna pick up reds now because I've already got some reds in here. This one I know has a little bit of blue in it, so before I take that flat color in, I'm gonna take a little bit of that. So I'm mixing some colors here, but I'm also mixing a lot on the canvas or on the paper. Kind of watch your edges. So there's my red shape. And then this one has like a blue kind of swirl through the middle. I'm going to interpret that as this for right now, because I know that this has to come into this other shape. So for right now, I'm going to put that and I'm going to come back to that. I need red here. And that fades. If I had white, which I should have planned for, I would fade that up into white there. I will pick a different color. I'll use yellow. And this is a pretty strong thumbnail in terms of it's pretty well thought out for gradients already. If your thumbnails are flatter, that's okay. You just have to kind of be thinking about what you're going to blend as you go, so that way you're not just painting flat. I'm always changing my color. I'm always kind of blending something else in there. I'm going to pick up that blue just a little bit. Why did this get really dark right here? Anybody catch that? What did I have on my brush already? Red and
Blue.
I had a little blue and yellow. What happens when you mix red and blue and yellow? You get dark, right? Okay, the rest of these, oh, I got red down here. didn't subdivide this shape properly, did I? That's fine. Don't be afraid to change your mind as you paint. The cool thing about paint is you can just try it, and if you don't like it, you paint over it. Like, it's pretty easy to adjust. Okay, so I've got that. Purple is the new black. So if you want something to look dark, I want you to think purple before you think actual black paint. Black paint has a tendency to make your colors look very flat, and if you haven't picked up on this already, I'm a little bit anti-flat color because I think it's just more interesting without it, and it's easier to work with. As soon as it gets flat, it becomes very difficult to work with. So just keep that in mind. Just try that. That's not the only way to paint, but my job is to kind of push you in new creative directions, so I want you to be thinking of that. I'm going to put in these blue spaces. How do we feel about this blue? What do you notice about it? Feel dark?
Mm-hmm.
And on the color wheel, yellow is the brightest, right? And blue is closer to the opposite side. Purple is going to be your darkest. So that's why I want you to think purple instead of black. Because if you dull your purple out, you will basically get gray. So I've got blue. This one's a little bit darker up there, so I'm going to add a little red, and you're going to see how dark it's going to get. So you're seeing a little bit of the white of the paper come through. This is making sense. This is a giant brush for the size of this paper, but I wanted to go fast so you don't have to sit and watch me forever. So this comes through to this, right? So I'm coming back up into this shape. And it doesn't matter that we already painted and it already dries, like you just take more paint and you blend it out again. It's not a big deal. So I don't want you to think that it has to be perfect. If you are a perfectionist and you have tendencies, you're gonna have to work on that. That's a good one for painting class because it kind of forces you to work around that. Okay, I lost this. I lost that linear element, so I would probably go back in there with a darker brush. Or a smaller brush, I mean, with a darker paint. Is this making sense? Do you feel like you got it?
Yeah.
If you feel like you got it and you want to go work, go ahead. Don't feel like you have to sit and watch me finish this whole thing. I'm just going to keep going for the sake of keeping going.
Okay.
You won't offend me if you leave though.
Excuse me? And so much.
Yes.
My camera still going?
Yeah.
Okay.
Good. Almost 20 minutes now.
Okay.
We have 7 minutes.
I'm not sure exactly what I'm creating for my sketchbook, but it's looking cool.
Good.
Roll tide. Yeah.
Oh, she only invited
Looks
us.
good.
See it. Can you see people?
Why don't you just turn your brightness up? A pupil isn't that big, my God. Hello.
Hi. How you doing?
Hi.
I meant to come in this
Do you see
morning.
it?
And I
Pretty?
was like,
You see over here?
that baby's
Put that-
crazy. That's what that means. And for every
still have,
performer
like,
under the
5
sun,
minutes
is
left.
that not like what our
Does that look
nightmares
right?
are? Yeah.
No,
So I kind of chuckled about it, I have to say.
I'm
We'll
glad.
figure it out.
You're glad that I could be your,
Yes.
you could be my source of amusement.
I mean, I am happy to do that anytime, but I don't want to do that again. That
No,
was
seriously.
not something I wanted to
How
do.
are you doing this and using this?
This week I'm not. This week I'm not there at all except for Wednesday because we have the Wednesday performance in the morning.
Alrighty.
So
Because I wasn't really aware that you
Can I
were
stop
still
it?
working.
yes, you can stop.